You may have seen this video somewhere around the internet and may have thought that this girl is European, but actually, she's a Palestinian girl born and raised in the West Bank of Nabi Saleh. Ahed Tamimi is a Palestinian girl fighting against the occupation. You may have seen this video too of her punching and kicking an Israeli soldier. The reason for this was because this Israeli soldier had just shot her cousin with a rubber steel bullet in his face just for being outside, and she was furious. Who is Ahed Tamimi? Well, Ahed Tamimi to many Palestinians is seen as a symbol of resistance fighting against the Israeli occupation. But to the Israelis, she is simply seen as a tool for the pro-Palestinians used as propaganda. The reason for this is because they believe that Ahed Tamimi is a European girl pretending to be a Palestinian girl because of her European feature likes. Not a lot of people believe that Palestinians have blonde hair, blue eyes, which is why they believe that Ahed is just a tool of propaganda. In the memoir, Ahed Tamimi starts off with a gloomy tone describing the conditions of the Israeli detention center that she was being held at. She also uses a sorrow tone to describe how she felt when she was there. She also talks about how she did not feel any privacy because cameras were watching her left and right. And when she wanted to use the restroom, there was 2 cameras watching her. So she was afraid that they were going to use her. So Ahed tried to stay calm at this moment. But for a 16-year-old, it's hard to stay calm, especially if you're being watched while trying to use the restroom. Ahed goes into her memoir and talks about the many, many dreams that she had. And there was one in particular that she wanted to achieve. And that was to have her cousin's house demolished. The reason for this was so if her cousin's house was demolished, she can come and live with her. So Ahed and Marah are best friends, and they're cousins by blood. And they only live 2 minutes from each other. So one day, Marah's family, her cousin, they receive a note that their house was going to get demolished in under a month. Marah and Ahed were happy. They were like, oh, we prayed for this day. We prayed for this day. So they prayed. They kept praying. They kept praying. 1 month passes. At 5 a.m, their neighbor's house was destroyed by the Israelis. It was just destroyed and demolished. Ahed and Marah start to regret this decision. So a tone of regret is used later on into the chapter. And they both state that it was very foolish of them to ever think that their house should get destroyed. And it was very childish. But at the time, they were 9 years old. They didn't know what to think or say. Ahed starts to get more and more active with her parents' protestings that they always set up every Friday. Ahed would always make sure that she's there every Friday to voice her opinion and talk about the apartheid and the oppression that has been going on for the past 75 years. One of those days, Ahed was getting ready to go down to another protest, and as she was going down, an Israeli soldier starts shooting rubber steel bullets on children, and Ahed was one of the children that was hit. Ahed uses figurative language to describe how her hand was swollen up like a balloon when she was shot with the rubber steel bullet. In chapters 6 and 7, the tone starts to shift towards seriousness. Ahed just got done finishing a protest. As she was getting ready to go home, she had found out that her cousin Muhammad was just shot in the face. Ahed was furious. She went to the hospital to go check out. His life was in critical condition. They didn't know if he was going to live or die. So Ahed went back home. 2 Israeli soldiers were waiting for Ahed. Ahed was furious that they were waiting for her, but in a calm tone, she was telling them to leave her property. They wouldn't comply with her. Ahed's tone starts to turn towards aggression. She starts becoming more aggressive with them. Ahed starts yelling and screaming, and then after that, she starts getting physical with them. She starts smacking and kicking them, telling them to get off of her property. They, of course, don't get off, and Ahed starts using force to get them off. Then that's when her video starts going viral of her smacking and kicking the Israeli soldiers. Ahed Tamimi, at the age of 16, was sentenced to prison. The reason for this was because of the famous video of her kicking and slapping the soldiers that were at her house when her cousin Muhammad was shot. After Ahed was arrested, she was taken to the Israeli detention center where she would be held for the next 10 hours to be interrogated by Israeli soldiers. And she was also interrogated by the soldier that she had slapped and kicked. When Ahed was being interrogated by the soldier, there was a lot of repetition. He just kept saying, "Who? He was asking Ahed who was with her, so he just kept saying, who? He was trying to stay calm with her. He was using a calm tone with Ahed to see if he can get any information. But the Ahed was told by her lawyer not to say anything since she was a minor and she should remain silent the whole entire time. But the soldier was starting to get very frustrated, so he starts shouting at her. He starts using an aggressive tone with her. Ahed asks multiple rhetorical questions to her audience. She asks them how would they react if their land was stolen? How would they react if their homes were raided every day, or their parents arrested, their mother being shot, your uncle being killed? Imagine yourself in my shoes. How would you react?